Alrighty, so before we get started with new content for the week, does anybody have any questions at all regarding Perforce or Unity, getting the two to work with each other, or the assignments as well, the LDD and the visuals and setting that's due tonight? James, you got a question?
Yes. How are we supposed to, I think I read it somewhere, but I can't find it anymore. Like where, how do we upload oh, you already answered that. Never mind. Okay, I'm sorry. I forgot about the answer. Oh, yeah. Okay, never mind. Question has been answered.
All right, cool.
Yes.
So any questions at all about Perforce? Anybody having problems submitting their work, uploading changes?
So I was having issues because I think the library.
I'm good.
The library and
In your
shouldn't be.
Yeah. So let's take a look. Oh, hey there. This means that this looks like this folder itself is a project, right? But then you look here and this says project Perez _David, and then I open this up, and now this is like the complete version, because it looks like here you're missing your assets folder for this project. So it'd probably be best to just delete everything in the, bless you, in the David Perez folder, and then just submit a new project that you know is clean. But does anybody know what David could do to get his library folder off the depot?
You have to empty the folder out first.
You're thinking of a change list. So if you have files in a change list, first you need to empty out the files and then delete it when it's empty. But yeah, you just mark these for delete and then submit your change list. String of pearls is slightly different because here what you want to notice is that there's small little choke points in between each one of these nonlinear pieces. So this could represent a number of things, what these actual nonlinear elements are. So does anybody have any suggestions of maybe what a linear game would be or what a string of pearls would be? And also don't just think of video games as well. Think about other, actual analog games or other experiences, any other type of game. Anybody have anything for linear type of game or a string of pearls? Not quite. So what about
Geometry Dash would be a linear game.
Geometry Dash?
Yeah, it's a mobile game.
Is that like an infinite runner?
It's not infinite, but yeah, it is a runner.
Like
so
a distance game?
Side scroller, you just jump on platforms and it's the same platform every time.
Yeah. So that's a linear game, right? So any distance game, any endless runner. Yep, the Impossible game is a good example. What about just a foot race? Right? Yep. That's linear gameplay. You start at the beginning, you run to the end. Very, very straightforward. So what about string of pearls? Anybody have any guesses?
You mean choke point? Like what specifically do you mean?
Choke points, that's a good question. Choke points are just spots that every player is going to have the same experience, or this is going to happen every time. No matter what happens in this non-linear part, you still get to this point where it's a bottleneck that every player goes through, whether it's like a cutscene or like a certain entrance, or it could be anything. Anyone have? I'll give you a hint. Not any FPS, but yes, there's many, yeah. Huh?
I said, no count, because when somebody pulls out a draw 4, I chill.
I could see there being elements of that, definitely. What about like something that you guys are working on now? Scraps, right? And that's string of pearls, right? Scraps is string of pearls. And you can think about this, each one of these is a student's area, right? You're going through each area. It may not be linear completely, and then you get to this choke point where you transition. This could also represent your entire area of scraps also. Think about it that way. So maybe this is one area of your level that something happens. It doesn't necessarily matter like which order they collect these items in, but they get to this choke point where they transition to the next linear area. So this could almost be a string of pearls among a larger string. So scraps. Anything else? Anybody have any? I know someone said FPS. So definitely like the Halo the Halo games where there is some little, you feel like you're exploring, or you feel like there's a little bit of non-linearity, whether you kill some enemies. BioShock, you said? Yeah, very good example, definitely. What about a football game? Right? Anything with a basketball game, anything with quarters where, it doesn't matter what happens in the first quarter, but it's going to end. There's going to be that choke point. All right?
Choke points also representative of progression hindrance.
Yeah, well, just not hindrance, but more of like
Like if you don't follow through at the choke point, like if you don't do whatever that experience is that everybody is supposed to have, you can't progress.
well, yeah, it's more of that every single player is going to have that same experience.
That's true for like any sort of progression in any game. If you just decide to stop playing,
Yeah.
well, it's done.
Mm-hmm. Just think about this more in terms of how you're designing the actual experience. Like people can do whatever they want here, but everyone's going to see the same cutscene, or the level's going to end here. Everyone's going to have the same overall experience.
Both teams go to a huddle, and then
Yep.
play, and then they go to a huddle.
Exactly. So branching and reductive, these ones are definitely unique and not so much. There's definitely plenty of this that goes on in video games or in just digital gaming as well. But these I can definitely see a lot of usage in more analog and other types of games. So branching, I mean, pretty straightforward, right? You start at the beginning, same single start. Everyone has the same starting point, and then your decisions that you make throughout the game definitely affect the endings, right? And your progression. And reductive is the opposite, right? You have a lot of different possibilities, and you reduce down. You get to a certain point, you reduce down even further, and then you have a final ending. So those two are pretty straightforward. Anybody have any ideas for branching or reductive?
Quantum Break and like all the Telltale games for branching.
Telltale games, good example for branching, right? A lot of
Telltale is more reductive. Well, season 2 is branching, but season 1 is reductive. Walking Dead.
really.
Walking Dead
I haven't-
season 2 has 2 endings, or no, wait, like 3, 4 endings, but season 1 only has 1 ending.
Really? So that's cool how they pretty much merged branching and reductive together then, right? So the first series, I haven't played the second one, so I didn't know that, but I know that the first one is definitely in here.
Expecting it, 'cause, like, all their games only have 1 ending, but then season 2 has like a bunch. I'm like, very cool.
Put a little asterisk there 'cause it's not the second one. John, you got something?
For branching, can you say like a game of poker would be?
I wouldn't say everyone has the same start.
I'm lenient, but yeah, I mean, no one has this, but defend why you think that. And this is where we're getting into where there's some that are just either a mixture or they don't quite fit. But why would you say that? I want to hear you out and why you think it's branching.
Well, because there's the ending is kind of random, and you have to make a series of decisions.
Yeah.
On the way there, each turn you have to decide: do I fold, or do I keep going, or do I call? And then each player has to also make a decision based on what cards are then being flipped. So then, like, the kind of decision you have to make kind of
Changes every time?
every time.
I see where you're going with that. I think of it's more of string of pearls to where your choke points are when players are getting knocked out. So maybe you start with 8 people. Your non-linear gameplay that you're describing happens in here, and then a choke point happens when the first person gets knocked out. And then the gameplay changes and it's non-linear again, and then someone gets knocked out. And then basically you get down to 2 people and 1 person wins.
Reductive, I guess like a game of Clue be reductive because there's like
Yeah.
a possibility. of
That's a
anyone
good, yeah, the game of Clue for the reductive, definitely. I can see that.
What about like Heavy Rain for reductive?
Well, there's more than 1 ending. Don't spoil it.
Yeah, I haven't played Heavy Rain. I missed a bunch of the PS3 generation.
You don't have to find it.
So would if games like baseball or football being branching, since both teams start out the same spot but have the option or have the capability of ending?
Those are more in the string of pearls, right? Because your choke points are between each inning or between each quarter, and then you're right because each inning or each quarter can play out differently. John, you got something?
World of Warcraft be redundant?
No, it's not. We'll get to that.
Out of possibly starting out in all the different starting areas, going through all the different quest lines, depending on like what you chose, and then in the end, every player ends up in the end game in a shared sort of realm where it doesn't really matter what, if you're alliance or horde, because you're all doing the same.
Not quite. You're close. I can see you're getting ahead of yourself a little bit. We haven't gotten to World of Warcraft just yet. So Robert online says L.A. Noire. Anyone want to guess? Anyone played L.A. Noire? What? Yeah, it's a good game. What? I can see there's a little bit of there's a sandbox element to the game, right? But I can definitely see that fitting in reductive, right? If you think about each case, it could definitely fit into reductive. Another branching one that I definitely like to, I like trying to come up with as many examples that aren't video games as possible, because then you can really see the design in its simplest form and then add that into a digital experience, like the Choose Your Own Adventure books. That's the branching gameplay. As well as anybody have any other for reductive?
Well, you said to choose your own adventure one, but we had to do that depression quest last month. That would be more.
Depression Quest? That sounds sad.
It's so sad.
Oh God.
That one I think would be more reductive, because as you go through and you make different choices and stuff, it starts graying out your options.
Okay, so you're left with only one or two options at the end?
So reductive, it could be reductive even if there's more than one ending.
There should be one final result. What are you thinking?
So would it be branching?
Well, I mean, you're depressed in all of them, but
Yeah,
a little
it's
bit
just
more, a little
varying
bit
the
less,
degrees
yeah.
of depression.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
You're still depressed.
Okay.
every ending.
Okay, so that's the same. That's the overall same general experience.
So if you have a lot of starting points but only two endings, would that be branching or reductive?
I mean, that's where it's like right now we're getting to very specific games or specific sets where it may not fit exactly into these models. You can't just shoehorn everything into these 6 models, but it could definitely be an element of reductive, but it stops here, right? It stops here with 2 endings, right? Like it's not saying it's wrong. This is just a common model that's been seen over and over again. So for reductive, what about a Rubik's Cube? Right? A lot of possibilities, a lot of variation. You end up with one final result. And another of my favorites, jigsaw puzzle, right? You start out and you slowly reduce down. Maybe you start here and you reduce down to getting the border pieces done, and then you reduce down to get a certain color done, and then by the end of it, you just have a completed puzzle.
Jenga and Risk be reductive? Jenga, you decide which.
Jenga.
I would say
Pieces to pull out, and then with Risk, you got.
But Jenga doesn't have variable starts. Jenga has the same. I almost feel like Jenga could be branching.
though it only has one ending, is when it falls down.
It's true.
And the possibility.
But it only has a single start.
I guess it could be down there on the football shape.
Yeah, so let's.
Wait, how does Jenga not have variable starts?
Because Jenga always starts with the tower the exact same start.
Yeah, it always starts on one.
I guess I'm thinking more like the start is like when the first piece gets
Yeah,
pulled.
that's what I was
Okay.
thinking.
Well, yeah, but at the very, very beginning, the setup is always.
I definitely think we're getting close to maybe. I think Jenga could actually fit very well in the football shaped.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. It's the starts at one point, and then anything in between can happen, and then it ends in one thing when it falls down.
Yeah, so football shaped and sandbox, these two are definitely very similar, but there's definitely key differences. So football shaped, keep in mind that there is a single start. Everyone has the same starting point, same experience. And then the nonlinear gameplay happens throughout the entire experience, and then one final choke point, and then the ending. So anybody, and then so the sandbox, and I just got ahead of myself there, if anyone caught that. So the variable start, right? A lot of different options, tons of different choices, completely nonlinear gameplay, and then there's basically no ending. You can play it forever. MMOs, right? So that's very common. World of Warcraft, any MMO will fit into here. Also, games like The Sims, right? So same thing. Completely nonlinear. You can create whatever character, family, person you want in the very beginning.
I would say Minecraft, but that has an ending.
No,
It
it does?
It does.
How do games like Dungeons and Dragons fall in? What do you think? What's your opinion? Anyone else? Anyone done a tabletop game? Well, there's definitely a lot of choices, right? So you can right, and that's where it could maybe be a mixture of the sandbox and reductive. So there's some reduction that happens, but there's also a sandbox. So this is an opportunity for you to like play with them and try and come up with your own and see how they designed that concept, right? Because it may be that their design ended up falling into a mixture of one or two of these combined. There may be more out there than this. Definitely options for that. Robert online said GTA, it has an ending. So GTA fits into one of these two. Anyone know? So he says it has an ending, so that should be a giveaway which one it is. Football shaped, right? Because you always start, like in GTA 4, you start as Nico every time. In GTA 5, you play as those three characters every time. Do whatever you want throughout the whole game, but when you beat that main mission line, you end up with that same ending. So this goes for other sandbox games, right? This is really, even though this is called sandbox, the sandbox linear games, and I say linear in terms of they have that same main mission line that every single person will play through. That's really where those fit in those football shapes. So Crackdown, right? Super popular for Xbox fans. That's definitely one of my favorites. John, you got one?
So, I feel like GTA would almost be sandbox because yeah, you can complete the storyline, right? But then aren't you just back at your place and you just keep playing after the story is done?
Yes, but there's still that kind of goes, it almost, if you were to build this out in like a flow chart of how the experience goes for the player, it would almost be like they get to this ending and then there's this path that loops back to this, right? And that's just the design of the game. There are some games where it would be like when you complete that final mission, you're done, right? And the only way to technically play again is to reload your save before you even done that mission that you've done. A lot of games now have gone away from that, as obviously.
That's the last game I played that did that.
Yeah. So there's a lot of games that will allow you to go back into it, but games that have that fixed ending and really just that main storyline mission system is really what falls into that football shaped. You could almost feel that football shaped is just an extension of string of pearls, right? It's extending out how much nonlinear we're giving them, and really there's an argument for saying that GTA could be fit into string of pearls, right? If you're just doing that main storyline, that's almost there's an argument for fitting that into string of pearls.
So like the final ending doesn't necessarily have to be like roll credits, like you're back at the main menu, or like games completely over. It can be.
No, the fixed ending could just be the same. You've beat the last boss, or like everyone sees the same cutscene. Like this is towards the ending of the ending of the game, the final conclusion. So Oscar said Fallout. Yep, that's definitely a good one for football shaped. So anybody played Star Fox 64? I'm gonna throw out a few games at you guys and see if you can fill them in here. Anybody? Star Fox? Yeah? Who knows where does that fit into these 6? Yep, exactly. All right, what about Angry Birds? Who knows where Angry Birds goes? Why is it linear?
Because I mean, you just go from level to level. There's no real change. Yeah, I mean, yeah, different outcomes on how many stars you get, but really the storyline and everything is the same.
So you, from what you described there, take a look at them again and see, because you're close.
I said Angry Birds or Flappy Bird?
Yeah, Angry Birds. Yeah, String of Pearls, right? Because you said you go level to level, how many stars you get or how you complete the level changes, right? That's where this nonlinear comes in. But when you go from level to level, it's still the same outcome, right? And that's how you can tell how linear and String of Pearls worked in tandem. They're very, very similar to each other. So what about God of War? This one's tough. I've played it briefly. So String of Pearls?
Yeah, I saw.
Isn't it just one continuous experience though? There's not really levels?
Yeah, there's
Levels and cutscenes.
And there's cutscenes? Okay, so yeah. So what about a multiple choice test? Like the Perforce test and the rigid body test you guys have to take? Huh? What? Are we talking about assignments now? What about a test? Just a multiple choice test. Where would that fit into here? Well, that would be like each question. You're reducing each question down, but.
Wouldn't it be totally linear?
Yep, completely linear. Completely linear.
It's always the same every time. I
Yep.
assume you're taking the same test.
Exactly.
Better.
Anybody play Animal Crossing?
That's sort of like Frogger.
Not quite.
It's like Frogger, but more.
Where do you think Animal Crossing would fit in here? Why?
Well, because like, you know, if you don't upkeep your area or whatever, it'll die or like, you know, change the looks.
Yeah.
So your choices throughout the game decide.
Is there an actual ending in?
I don't know.
No, I don't.
You just keep playing forever, right?
Yeah, so I guess
Sandbox, right? Yeah, definitely down Sandbox. So definitely you guys can tell how there's some that are definitely fit very well and cleanly into these, but there's others where you're like, well, is this game this one or this one? And there's no correct answer. There's some that these are just basic models that you can go by. But there's definitely others out there, and there's combinations of them. And maybe there's reductive, but there's two endings, right? Or maybe it branches, but then turns into reductive, right? So there's a lot of different options there. And, you know, games have become so, you know, really trying to push the unique, not falling into, you know, the indie companies out there, not the AAA companies, right? The indie companies that are really trying to make a name for themselves, those are the ones that really have to be innovative and coming up with new mechanics, new games, interesting and new experiences. And when you start to blend these and come up with other forms of gameplay is how you can really come up with an interesting design. So don't just flock to your first, you know, your first idea, right? From the John Cleese video, I remember him saying that. Don't just go to your first idea. If you spend more time on it and come up with more concepts and more ideas, definitely you'll be able to push yourselves even further in terms of creativity. So I'll share this document with you guys. I'll post it in the announcement for the class when I post the recording. So you'll have access to this document as well. So by now, who is completely done with their LDD? One person? Two? Few? Okay, so a few. By now, you know, we should at least have a design of what we want to do for our level, right? So the next step in the process, once you have your design and your LDD completed, the next step is to make the map, right? But there's a step in between there that's important that you don't want to skip out on. So I know because it's not a graded assignment, some of you have already tuned me out, definitely, I'm sure. So just make sure make sure that you're not so focused on just the grades, right? And this is just a good piece of advice I want to give you from being a full sail student to now being on the other side of things. Don't just think about the grades, just think about the work, right? If you do the work, you're going to get the grades that show what your work is. So don't be so like, oh, I need to get this grade on my map to pass, or I need to get this grade to get an A or something like that. Don't worry about that. Just think about making the best possible level you can, because at the end of it, your grades aren't going to matter as much as your portfolio does. Yes, your grades are super important, but if your work shows off that you can excel, that's ultimately what's going to get you a job. So that's really what we're here for. So the step in between that I'm talking about is the flow chart or the level flow. So you've done flow charting before, right? Yes, some of you probably too much of it, I'm sure. But this is a little different. So this is, you're more of just laying out the flow of your level. So I'm going to pull up one example that I had created back at the formation of the class. So this was my flow chart, and really what you want to be doing here is laying out your mechanics. That is what's important. So really want to go over that with you guys. The mechanics are what's important with the flow chart, because we don't care about the layout or the visual look of it just yet. We want to know, how is this area going to visually flow into the other, or how are they going to mechanically flow into each other? Where am I learning my new mechanics? Where am I practicing them? Where am I mastering them? Really setting up the pacing of the level as well. So I have this this legend up here. So these are just some simple icons that that you can use to get yourself started. You can create your own if you'd like, but this isn't, you know, your typical flow chart. So I just want you to understand the concepts that you've learned from Level Design 1, or no, not Level Design 1, GD1. Learn the concepts that you take the concepts from there and apply that to this. And really, this is a little bit more creative and a little bit more of a brainstorming way of thinking. But definitely this will help you when you actually go and build your map. So just like you did the brainstorming before you did the LDD, you want to do your flow chart before you even touch your map. Because your map, you're going to be placing little icons and building things out and having everything look pretty and nice. But if you have to go back and rework that because maybe your mechanics aren't flowing properly or there's too much space in between, now you need to move all those icons. It's just more tedious work, right? It's like doing something, it's like same thing how I talked about putting UVs on an object before you're done modeling it. But you're going to have to change that, so don't get ahead of yourself just yet. Really focus on this and take the time to do it. So in this level, my idea and my concept was the Bastions want you to return a vehicle. They want you to find this vehicle and bring it back to them. So here in the notes, I just tell the player what I have you list out what the player goal and the featured asset is, right? This is directly right from your LDD. You just copy and paste that right into here. And then I have listed out why, pretty much the elements of why it's my featured asset. So I need to find a tire that's missing, and I also need to replace the battery. And then when I'm found those pieces and plug them in, I'm able to get inside the vehicle. I can't drive it because there's no drivable vehicles and scraps. But there's a cutscene that just shows the vehicle driving and smashing through the side of the building, right? So that's my level in a nutshell. They need to get to this vehicle and break through it, or break through this glass with the vehicle and return the car. So same thing that you're going to do for your map where you have images connecting what each room is. Think about these in terms of interactive areas. You don't necessarily have to think of these in terms of, okay, this is room 1, now the player walks through a hallway, now they get to room 2. It doesn't have to be so literal. It can be like, right, it could just be a small area like here you see in my images. I'll zoom in so you guys can see those. So here's like an image I found for my generator room, and then here's the control room. This could necessarily be the same space. I haven't yet defined what it looks like. This is just concept, right? This is just generator area, space, interactive area, control, interactive space. It could be a room, it could be a floor, it's What it looks like yet doesn't matter. It's just what's going on in that area, what's going to be the interaction. And that's what you want to do, is start to list out what are all the setups that you're going to be doing. So again, take them right from your LDD, your minor setups and your major setups that you've worked on, and you put those right in here, and you list out what the actual interactions are for each one of these areas. Excuse me. Then what you can do is definitely start to grab some of these icons and put them in here. So, excuse me. So you have a good understanding of what's going on in each one of these areas. How many scripts are you going to have to write? Like, you want to plan for this. Are there turrets? Where are your collectibles? Where are the objectives being completed? A lot of the actual pacing and flow you want to do in here, and really plan everything out, and then use this as to your best of ability to create your map. And then what's really nice about this, you're like, oh my God, I have to do all this writing, and then for my map, I need to also write a bunch of notes. Well, you can really just copy and paste from your flowchart to your map. So it's not like you're doing all this twice. You're planning yourself out ahead of time. Maybe there's more notes you add into the map itself. Maybe you add in a few visual notes or a few other things, add in additional collectibles. But really in here, you really want to be focusing on the mechanics of your level and the flow of everything that's going on. And really the imagery will definitely help you connect everything together, as well as set you up for success on your map. So I'm not going to be grading this. You don't have to turn this in, but this is definitely a vital part to the level design process. And the reason that we're not having you turn them in is because you turn this in, how the class was set up the very first 2 months I was running it, was you turn in the flow chart and basically your final flow chart and your rough version of your map on the same day, and then have another week to polish your map itself. And it just felt like the feedback that I was giving for the map was very similar for the flow chart, because a lot of the mistakes or a lot of the same issues I was seeing was correlating one side by side. So I just increased the percentage of the map rough, so it's a little bit more weight. But this is very, very important to do, moving forward. And then what you can do from here, once you have everything laid out, and this is definitely the important part. Let me just go ahead and group these. Control-Alt-G. So another thing to keep in mind with this, and when I had students actually turning these in, I saw this. It's like I give an example, and then I just get back the exact same example over and over again. It was like they just copied this template and then just deleted the text and wrote their own text. So just because this reads left to right like this, right? So a player starts over here and they end up on the right, and then this would translate to the map for some reason, where it would be the player starts over here, they do their thing, they end up on the right. Like it was very cookie cutter. And don't think of it like that. This could be all wonky and all over the place, and it doesn't represent player path thing. It doesn't represent the flow of the level yet. It just represents the mechanics. There's no visuals tied to this yet, right? You just want to have this image to kind of give yourself an idea of what this may look like. So once you do that, once you have each one of these little interactive areas, these little spaces laid out, iterate on this, right? This is where the brainstorming part comes in. So now I have these grouped. Now I can just grab this. We're like, okay, what happens if the player gets to the control room and then they go into the generator room? Come on. It's not letting me grab it. There you go. Right, so now I'm just very easily able to try this out, where if I was just doing this with an actual map in Google Draw, oh, come on. Right, that would take me forever to move all those icons around and realign everything, but I quickly just made that swap, and I'm able to come up with a few different ideas quickly. So maybe I add in something to where, so right now my level is, they go through this generator and control area, then they go up to the next floor and they find the showroom, right? It's like some type of building where the car showroom's on the top floor. But maybe I could have the player start, and they start at the top floor, and they fall through a hole and they fall into this control room, right? So I'm very quickly and easily able to still brainstorm how this is going to flow together and how I'm going to connect each one of these areas. So you'll also notice on my transitions, definitely make use of these one-way and two-way transitions, because you'll notice here we have an icon as well for when you make your map. You have a two-directional door and a one-way door, or a two-directional where you can go either way. It doesn't have to necessarily be a door. It could be a hole in the floor. It could be any way to traverse, really. It doesn't need to be a door. And then this could be more one way where you get through this point, maybe something shuts behind you or something collapses or you're not able to go back. So definitely make sure you label those as well. And then when you move forward, and make your map, this is just going to make your lives a lot easier and allow you to have time to also in your map do a little testing and different tweaking and do different layouts for your map itself. So let me show you one student, and this was Frank from, he's currently in PNP 3. He is very visual, definitely a very visual designer, and he definitely put a lot of effort into his level flow. So a lot of notes, right? And you can tell, if I'm just going to zoom in on the actual interactive parts, not too much going on in here, right? These are just little modules that he made, right? Little group with few different, right? Excuse me. He used his notes in these little bubbles to say like what are the main functionality things. So here he's introducing the player to water and gas. Very straightforward. So, and then if you want to read further, you can go into each one of these, right? And a lot of this he was able to just copy and paste a lot of this information right into his map when he got to that point. So, and he was very easily able to move these around, see how the flow can be, if anything wants to be changed, very quickly and easily. So definitely this is an important step to the process, so don't skimp on this one. Again, you can also see that he made a few custom icons. That's definitely going to be helpful. So if there's something in your level you know already, you want to go ahead and make some icons for it, go ahead and do so. Whether it's on Google Draw or Photoshop, or there's also a website, I'll show you guys this, gameicons.net. Super, super awesome website. You can go, I made a few of the icons from the map from here. But really helpful, totally free. You can download these with color, however you like, and then definitely use these. John, you have a question?
I was just going to say that I like that you also include the IPMD, like which ones can look like which.
Yeah, definitely, and yeah, definitely if you want to like color code those or something, or really make it apparent to yourself and other people reading it, definitely important information to include. Yeah, so definitely make sure you include your IPM levels of your mechanics in your flowchart and definitely your map as well. So there is an actual assignment for, not an assignment, yeah, so in your IND content folder, there is a level flowchart experiment link. So this will pretty much walk you through, this is the assignment that used to be. So this will just walk you through how to create your flowchart and what you'll be looking for. But this is just for your own personal use. You're not turning in your flowchart. This is just helpful for you to get going with your map. Inside of the IND229 content folder on Perforce. All right, so then from there, you'll be working on your actual map. So has anybody already taken a look at the map assignment? Not yet? All right, well, this is the meat and potatoes of the class. This is where you really want to put your best work into this, right? And just because it's the rough version, it's the first pass of the map, that doesn't necessarily mean you just want to be like, oh, I'll just do a little bit because it's just the rough version. No, try and basically get it completed. Get it completely done so that next week we can come in here and really critique it. What we're going to do is everyone's going to come up and stand up stand up right here and present your maps. And any online students that want to come to the lecture or the lab, you'll be able to put your map up here, and we can all, I can plug in the audio so everyone can hear them through the through the speakers, and then we can critique their map as well. So this is really a collaborative process, and this is what it's going to be like in the industry as well. Is you're going to come into a room with a bunch of level designers and probably the lead artist, the producer on the project, the lead developer, and you're going to pitch all your levels. And here it's going to be a little bit more friendly setting. So people can be ruthless in the industry. Definitely, if there's other level designers there, if there's 10 level designers and there's only 8 levels making it into the game, they're going to be gunning. They're going to be trying to find the 2 weakest, right, and cut them out. But here we want to be successful. We want to encourage each other, and we want to help each other along. So it's going to be an environment to give you as much feedback as possible. So really try and make your first pass at your map your best one. So here in the instructions, you'll see these common mistakes, and I touched on this briefly already. This was also linked in the LDD assignment, so you should already be familiar with this. But a lot of good information in here. So there's a few that stand out. I see all the time, and it's more and more common when you actually bring it into Unity, so it's definitely what you want to avoid. But I'll just talk about a few of these. I'm not going to talk about every single one because this is available to you, and hopefully you've already read some of it. So big empty areas. See this all the time where you just have a big, large space, and the player is just walking through it. There's nothing going on. And some games do this successfully, right? We talked about sandbox games like Grand Theft Auto and Oblivion and Fable and Crackdown, these big open world games, Skyrim, like massive games where some people may actually find those boring. Because if you noticed, I was just playing Assassin's Creed, the Assassin's Creed Black Flag, and I was like, man, if this was a level in Scraps, they would fail. Like there's nothing here. Like I'm holding A, or I'm holding right trigger and just running forward. Like we want to be, we want it to be dense. We want there to be a lot of gameplay, especially as students when you're trying to build a level to get yourselves a job. You want it to be over the top. You want it to be complex with detail and really fleshed out so everyone gets to experience that. So this image down here is very, very good example of what we want to see in the game Scraps. This was back when we were using Unreal, but still, this was a great example from a student that his level, not kidding you, the first milestone we came into the meeting, and this student had just an L hallway. So you walk down the hallway, you turn left, you walk down the hallway, you open the door, and you're done. Completely empty, and we're like, you got to do something here. It doesn't matter what it is. It could be anything you want. Just put something here for the player to do. And he was like, all right, cool. Next week he comes back with this image. And then we're like, yes, this is exactly what we want, right? So just this image, you can see there's a lot of gameplay going on here. So right from here, you see that there's a barricade in the way. So the player needs to climb a ladder here to get up to this little catwalk. But then these stairs are broken here, so you need to drop down and then deal with this fire. You can interact with this fire and put it out. Then around the corner, there was some objects to move, and there was some collectibles. So just a lot more going on, right? And this is just one small little shot of what was going on. Dense is definitely the word you're going to hear in level design and in PNP3 over and over again. Probably also next week you'll hear it a lot when we go through the maps. Really focus on density. Don't overpack it to where the player can't even move around, but you want to contain your gameplay and don't spread it out too much. So that one's pretty much self-explanatory from there on, but definitely a good indication of what you want to be doing with your actual space. So, and a few more I'm going to go over. Walking through halls and opening doors. This is not a mechanic. Don't think that, especially because we're going to be doing the entryway assignment for the class where you're pretty much making a doorway or some type of entryway. This isn't a mechanic, so it's not anything exciting. We walk through doors all the time. I wish I could just kick down a door one time or smash through like the Kool-Aid man, but can't do that, right? That's the kind of stuff we get to do in the game, so do cool stuff like that. Don't just have the player walking through doors and, and open up the same thing, and that reads right into one room, one item to collect. See that all the time where they have this hallway and they have a bunch of these little rooms and you can open up doors and then there's just a collectible sitting on the ground. It's like, why don't you just have the collectible outside the door then, or some other type of setup? Don't just use these little spaces as little areas to waste time and get these collectibles. Really reward the player for smaller gameplay actions as well as some major ones, but having just little hidden items behind doors isn't any creative setup at all. Haven't played it that much, so I'll take your word for it. You feel like there's something to collect and there's nothing there? That's even worse.
They did it on purpose just to make you like put more hours in the game.
Jeez. So not what? Yeah, that was definitely a nice interaction, but it didn't lead to anything, right? But that was way better than just if you walked up there those stairs and it was just an item sitting on the ground, right? You can see the difference between that interaction. So not guiding the player, this you'll see a lot more as you actually build out your level, but still something you should think about now. Don't just set your player in this big room and now you just want them to know to walk across the room and then come back over here and do this, and now you're just creating this crazy pattern for them to go about. You want to actually lead them with laying out geometries in a certain way. Actually, how you construct the level is going to impact what the gameplay is like, right? So if I just have this big open room with no assets in the middle or no way to guide the player's going to do a bunch of different things every time. But if you actually build out and have it flow in a certain way where you know when they get to this point, they've already done X, Y, and Z, or they've already learned this mechanic, it's going to make you a lot easier to communicate what's going on in your level itself. Another common one I really want to make sure you guys talk about, especially because you haven't turned in your LDDs yet. So if you wanted to do a literal key and lock, I don't know if I talked about this already, but if I did, I'm going to talk about it again. Avoid using a literal key that you want me to pick up. That includes key cards, even that goes as far as crowbars. I see it all the time. So where you're looking at me like you have all three of those in your level. So yes, they're acceptable in games, right? Like you can't say, well, this game has keys or this game has key cards. Why can't we? This is just part of the design and the creative vision of scraps, where it's been done over and over again, right? It's a very used up trope. We want to get away from that. This is game design, so we want to do something more interactive, more creative than that. So another reason why is realistic keys are very difficult to see, and that makes them very hard to find. So to counteract that, we could make them a little bit large or cartoonish and goofy looking, but that doesn't fit within the theme of scraps. Bless you. So we want to stay away from that, right, as much as possible. Just stay away from keys and key cards. Really do something more creative than that. Really push yourselves. No keys.
What about, should we go back and change?
I would.
Are we still just like able to use things that unlock doors? But I mean, like not literal keys, but something different. That
Totally. Yeah. That's why I'm saying literal key and locks, because there's so many things that are basically a metaphorical key and lock. And that's why the symbols on here. I actually want to change it so it doesn't look like a key, but that's why we call it barrier and solution. So you don't see this and be like, okay, the key is over here. You pick up the key, you go to this door. We don't want to see that. But basically, there's other things you can do to create this type of setup. Brandon, do you have a question? Sure, but what am I just going up to the door and pressing E, pressing the hack button? Like what is? Yeah. So I mean, that still seems to serve. That still serves the same purpose of a crowbar, but at least there's a little bit more behind that. I think if you can really add in an element to that, and you want there to be some degree of difficulty to where now I learned this hack thing. Okay, now I can just hack through every single door now. But maybe there's a way to add on to that to where it's secured now, and there's another step you need to take before you can hack it. So
Thinking like a call jacking, like you're doing games on the range, that circuits.
okay, so you want there to be some type of actual like mini game or some interaction?
Yeah.
Okay, there's definitely something there. Cheryl, you have another question?
Well, so I kind of asked you about it a little bit, one day last week about
The
pressure
puzzle?
plate
Yeah.
And the puzzle lock. But I got to thinking about that and I was like, well, because after playing through the one lock mechanism that I
Yeah.
was trying to figure out, I was like, well, what if I also had like key cards that were able to be picked up, but they weren't required to be picked up. Like
I would stay away from just key cards. Same thing goes.
I thought about it, because I was really kind of thinking about my mom when she tries to play some games. She has a little bit of difficulty like maneuvering the controls and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I would still say, stay away from key cards. There's more that you can do with those,
It
but
would just be stuff that you found.
Yeah.
You weren't looking for them. But,
okay, it's just one of your collectible items.
yeah, it would
Okay.
be a collectible item, but it would also be a usable item if you found it.
Okay.
Otherwise, you're stuck with the pressure plate.
Gotcha.
Okay, the reason I looked at you like that when you said no crowbars and things, because not specifically for doors, but let's just say chess.
Yeah.
Time's sake, I'd like a ratchet or like the play wrap, like crank it and stuff, and that'd be cool.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, I mean, if there's some certain things you want to be doing for collecting certain items, like you find this and now you can get into lockers or certain chests, that's okay. Just stay away from it for main progression. Like go find the blue key and open the blue door. Okay, now go find the green key, open the green door. Like you want to just stay away from that. So Robert had a question: would something like a gem by a nearby machine be considered a key and lock? Well, my question would be what is that? What do you do with that gem? And really, you want to be giving the players some feedback so they understand what it is to do. Real quick, and then I'll get to your question. So when I say metaphorical lock and key, there's plenty of things to do from here. Mr. Gazaway, the instructor for Project and Portfolio 3, he loves explosions. So his very common one to do is basically a stick of dynamite, right? You have a wall, maybe there's a little crack in it, it looks weak, and then basically you need to find a stick of dynamite. And then, or you need to find the dynamite and then find like a little clock and a wire and make a bomb out of it, right? You collect these three items. Now you carry your dynamite over to your wall and it makes an explosion. When basically when it collides with this trigger volume, it explodes. A hole makes in the wall, and now I'm through, right? That dynamite, that was your key, right? That it served the same purpose as just pick up this key and this door's open, except it was a lot more flashy. It was a lot cooler, right? There was a particle effect, cool sound effect. Maybe if the player was too close, they take a little bit of damage. There's a lot more going on than just a key. So now I hope everyone doesn't just add dynamite to their level now, because try and think of other things you can do with that. But that's just one example of a metaphorical lock and key. Do you have a question?
Yes, when it comes to the doors and like green key, blue key, and all that, what if there was a purpose to it? As in, my idea was there was elemental doors in a sense, a fire, water one, and once you get the key and obtain it, you get a shield of that type. Like if you get the fire key, unlock the fire door, you get a fire shield that keeps you going to your level. Or
Okay. So is it just a literal key I go and pick up?
not necessarily something you have to put. It's like you have to collect the pieces, put them together, open the door, and you get it. And there's also
Okay.
something inside there too.
Yeah. So I mean, just try and think of. I would try and just phrase it in a word that isn't a key. Don't make me feel like I'm actually getting a key. Maybe I'm collecting shards of something and making some type of stone, and then that stone is powering this door. Just stay away from that actual key usage, and then that'll, start to think you in terms of, 'cause what you just described is perfect, right? Like that is definitely the type of stuff that we're looking for. But when you just say the word key, it's just it's pretty much just getting you into thinking, okay, once I collect this item, I can go walk up to this thing and press the interact button, and now it's open magically. But think about, maybe you need to actually pick up these objects. Maybe it's actually a rigid body, or maybe it's a collectible that goes into the inventory that the player then puts somewhere else, like they charge something else and then that powers the door on. So that pretty much covers most of the key ones, except this final one, Dark Souls. You'll see, notice down here. I think someone had already mentioned Dark Souls the first week. Yeah, right. So some people like those games. Very, very big, successful, popular game. Plenty of other games like it. Super Meat Boy. My God, that game's so frustrating, but very well done. Very well done. N Plus is another one that isn't very tricky at first, but when you get to the end, it definitely gets sadistically hard. A lot of games are targeted to be extremely difficult, but that isn't necessarily what you want to be doing in this class. Don't be designing something that you can beat and only you. Everyone else plays it, they just get frustrated, and you just get happy because they're frustrated. You don't want that, right? You want to be designing an experience that you can see them start to build a connection with the player. They get excited when they're rewarded, and they get like upset just slightly if they die. You really want to just build this experience for the player. So the reason we have this in here is because it's very common to see that you want to make this very difficult thing that no one can play through, or very limited people can play. But save that to where after you've already been successful and you guys have already made your millions of dollars and hired me to work at your company. Save that for later. But for now, really focus on making something that is enjoyable for everybody, as many people as possible. So who here has seen Austin Powers? All right, cool. I don't know how much longer we'll be able to use this analogy for. So you guys know the scene to where, I think it was the first movie, when Dr. Evil finally catches Austin Powers, and he wants to hang him up with the sharks and the lasers and put him in the tank and make it all intense. But then Scott comes in and he's just like, what? Why don't you just shoot him in the head, right? Because that's just easy, right? But Dr. Evil wants to make it challenging. He wants to make it hard. This whole time when you guys have been playing games, those developers have been Dr. Evil. You guys, the people that like Dark Souls, that are designing games for Dark Souls, you guys want to be Scott Evil. You just want to shoot the player in the head and watch him die 100 times, right? But Dr. Evil, he sets it up in a way where he makes it very intense, and you think you're going to die, and you think you're going to get caught, and then you just slip away at the very end, right? You always get away. And Dr. Evil, he's going to set up that next trap for you. That's what game designers have been doing. That's what this whole time you guys have been playing games, you've been tricked. You're never going to die. You're always going to catch the princess. You're never going to fail. Ultimately, you're going to be successful. It's just how you've been led that way makes you think that you've been successful and accomplished all these awesome goals, which is why game design is so awesome. You got a question?
DMing like a tabletop game.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could just kill the players, or like
Exactly.
they could die, but it's so much more fun to watch them.
Right? Yeah, it's a lot. You have to
It's more interesting not only for the player themselves,
but for you as well. Yeah, right? If you just kill everybody or make it so difficult that everyone just gets frustrated, there's no capture to continue playing, and there's no way to bring in more people. But when you make it like general like that, you really get to capture a much larger audience. So really great document. Definitely continue to read through this. And definitely once you build your map, what I recommend doing is just look at this list here. And then just look at your map and then look at the list and see where your pitfalls might be. Because a lot of these are pretty straightforward, and you can notice, you'll notice on your map these mistakes you're making, or at least others, right? Because maybe when you're focused on your map for so long, it's difficult to catch all your own mistakes on your own work. But as you look at each other's work and as we critique each other, we're going to take a look at some of these and make sure we're not making these main mistakes. All right, so we talked about the flow chart and the map. So let me go ahead and pull up a few examples here. So this is an example map from Anthony Louder. He's one of the on-campus guys. Overall, his actual construction of the map was very, very well done. His actual usage of the icons in Google Draw are very well done to capture everything he wants here. So one thing you'll notice is, the player path. This is very important to convey to not only myself, but to other designers, your team that's working on your game or this level. Communicate what's going on in the level. So make sure that you have a player path laid out. And the 10-second rule, definitely keep this in mind too as you're building your level. You don't want the player to be walking long treks without any interaction. And you'll notice like here, this is a very good example of this is probably 10 to 15 seconds, probably a little bit longer of just walking straight forward. So avoid stuff like this. Avoid long stretches. When his first submission just had empty hallways where the player just walks through. And you need to have more going on there. So try to stay away from things like this. And really focus on the layout and the flow of everything. So after you do your flow chart, you should have an idea of how the player is going to progress from here. So now it's about connecting them. So how does the player get from this starting point to this crane area, right? So it's about building this interesting pathway for them to progress through. Also, your collectibles. So it doesn't have it on here. So on the map template, so on your map, you're required to have 15 collectibles. So in the flowchart, you'll see that there's 5. The reason I had 5 in the flowchart was just these are like your main ones that either are your best showcase of like most interesting and creative setups, or that they're ones that are required for the player to progress. So you want to include these certain ones that the player needs to collect before they can progress.
Are they 5 different types of collectibles or 5?
It's up to you.
Okay, so can like all 15 be the same type of collectible?
Yes, they can be. You want to also stay away from having multiple, like all bunch of one-of collectibles, because keep in mind when you play through the danger zone, let me open it up. Oh, another server. Yeah, because when you have, if you'll notice in the inventory that there's each entry has its own line. So if you have 15 items and they're all unique, it's probably going to take the whole side of the screen. So when you come in with a team, it's going to be a lot more difficult to order that menu, and everything's going to be flowing off the edge of the screen. So you really want to try and keep it concise as best you can.
So like no more than 3 usually? 3 different types?
Yeah, 3 or 4, and then I mean there's a way to, and then maybe as a team you guys come together and be like, all right, we used to, when this was a 1-month long class, what we used to do was have there be one collectible that the whole team needed to use. It was 10 cash. You were required to have 10 cash in the level, no matter what. You couldn't have 9, you couldn't have 11, and that was just something to see. Can the team follow instructions? Can they all collaborate? And it also ended up being like this just common collectible you have. So for now, like if your collectibles just end up being something like placeholder for now or some object, but then when you get into the team setting, you guys decide on, all right, what are our collectibles we want to do? Like you'll notice in the danger zone, it's opening now, there's the panels, like the green, the blue, and the gold panel. You could even do something like that in a system to where green are required, blue are hidden, or like blue are breadcrumb, right? You're just leading the player with them, and then the gold ones are hidden, right? Like some type of system like that, to where then you can have that same thing no matter what the player is actually collecting. Because, once you have that functionality in, you can swap out that model for anything and change the name to whatever you want. Question?
I know it's probably another but just so you have an idea, how many
It's usually going to be, you guys are 12, so as long as the whole party stays together, you'll probably be 3 teams. Huh?
how, because I noticed the other class 34 people,
Yeah.
and they're all separate groups.
No, they're one group.
They're one group?
Yeah, it's just one group. Usually it's, well, right now, so they're coming into they came into Project and Portfolio 3, and everything is separate still. The very first day of Project and Portfolio 3, for them it was, it's like, all right, day 1, go make your teams. All right, we're done. Like for you guys, you're gonna be showing off your videos, putting your maps up here. It's pretty much the whole time will be you guys figuring out whose area fits well with each other, which teammates you guys want to work with, like who you guys best get along with. It's totally up to you. Mr. Gazaway is going to let you have free reign with how you want to make teams. I know he's saying teams as small as 3 and as large as 7. So if you want to have a 7-man team, it's going to be getting to a point where we have a lot of online students right now going through, and it's only getting larger. Same thing with the on-campus. So it's getting to a point where it's up to you guys. Like there's pros and cons of both. There's definitely, with 3 people, there's a little bit more work and responsibility for each member, but the communication is much easier, right? It's much easier to stay in communication with 2 other people than it is 6. With 7 people, there's a lot more hands. That can also mean there may be too many cooks in the kitchen at once. But if you guys stay organized, like you dedicate, because you'll all have a role, right? Like a team lead, art lead, systems lead, and a QA lead. Those are like the 4 main, and from there you can have like basically people helping you out with 2 roles or something like that. So as long as you have a good structure, like, all right, this person's our team lead, and this guy is like this is a systems lead, and you actually take on those responsibilities, there's a lot of strong benefits from being on like a 6 or 7-man team. We've seen the 6-man teams be successful. We haven't yet had a 7-man team, but I know he's like, go for it. If they want to try it, go for it. So it's up to you.
The only reason I asked is because I'm kind of tightly knit group here, and just want to help everybody out.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. You're gonna be able to choose, and then the reviews are gonna be, that's a lot of the class. You'll see as the month goes on, and it's gonna be nice because you're gonna see the Project and Portfolio 3. You'll see their reviews as well as the online ones. So definitely stay alert with those, and definitely look ahead to see what other students are doing. And throughout the month too, I'll show you a few level design projects to see the really successful ones, and the ones that are, I'll show you the map and show you where the level end up, just so you can see the differences. And then, yeah, you'll be able to basically pick and choose which teams you want to be on. So here we are. So yeah, this is the level, just so our guests can see as well. And you've mentioned about so there's that inventory there. You'll see that if I have multiple more entries, it'll take up a lot of the screen. So this is what they're designing the level for, or designing a level around, is this 3rd-person character who has this grab-null who can pick up certain items and throw them. And this is just like a testing ground. So this is what all the students are given, and then from here they're able to design a level. So yeah, like if you want to use these as a base, I recommend at least doing so, but definitely keep in mind that every single student has been given these panels. So don't think if you do that, you're going to be the only one. So I recommend using these maybe as a placeholder for now, but coming up with something either as a team or individually, and then pitching that idea to your team, and maybe everyone will go forward with a certain mixture of the collectibles. So a few more maps. Let's go back to Anthony's map. So yeah, overall his actual construction. Another just few tips on creating the map. Don't use short little lines to create walls. You know, don't just make a little line like that and that's a wall. Lines or walls actually have thickness to them. So, you know, they're not just very thin pieces of geometry. Same thing when you're in Unity. Don't just make a wall out of a plane, right? There's, you know, whether it's a cinder block or actually framed in with 2x4s and drywall, there's some thickness there. So you need to actually compensate for that when you're building this. Because what you're going to end up doing is bringing your map from Google Draw right into Unity and building your map inside of Unity. So it's important that, what's that? Down here? Yeah, you'll be using it as a pretty much you'll be projecting it onto geometry and building.
So how do you lay out everything like floor 1 and floor 2?
Well, that you can do that. I'll show you another example. And when you bring it into when you bring it into Unity, you just have to bring in each floor as a separate image. So this is one team that did a very, very good job, and this was all basically floors. So here you'll see this is basically the overall layout image down here, to where area 1 is right here, area 2 is in between, and area 3 is down at the bottom. But we're going to get to this one as well. So yeah, this is like the level of detail that I want to see, and still I think that there's still a lot of stuff in his map that he could have improved, and he notices that, and he adapted and made changes already in level design, which is good to see. So this one, I remember giving them this note a few times that, you know, this stretch right here, like, why do you have this big open area the player just walks through? There's one little collectible over here, but there's a big empty space. So what he ended up doing is final, and it'd be I'm going to see if he has it updated in his map, because he should. He has like a little catwalk up here, so you climb up over this, you jump up over thing, there's a big barricade, so you have to drop down, and then you walk through. So there's a lot more going on in this empty space. Same thing up here. I definitely saw this was one room, one item to collect, just looking at the map, right? It's just, here's these little breakable walls, and behind each one is a collectible. And there's a bunch of empty space in between. So definitely still other things that could be improved, but overall his overall flow of the level is very well done. So he flows through everything. What's nice is you get up to this point, so you see this crane down here, right? You see this crane, this is your obstacle, and you go through and you get up to this generator room, or this area that will power it on, and then you find this fuel cell and you plug it in place and turn it on, and then you're able to break this glass and, you know, keep moving forward from there. So originally, in his original design, this generator room was over here on the right-hand side. So he wanted you to go to the crane, go to the generator room, and then walk back to the crane. So I suggested, well, maybe have these closer and have it flow in a way so the player doesn't need to backtrack as much. So this is where the visual element is the final step in the process. So the flow chart is super important, because he knew that he wanted to go from the generator area back to the crane. It was just, how do I get there? So if you really plan it out in your flow chart, you can eliminate a lot of those questions. So in terms of requirements for the actual map itself, you have to include 15 collectibles in some way. So really try and come up with interactive and unique setups for these. You can have some that are few that are similar, but you don't want to just have 15 collectibles and each one of them is under a pile of debris, or 15 collectibles and all of them are just on the ground. You saw in the example level that you know, that one area that still was okay, but he just had his cases just on the ground with no challenge or reward to them. You want to eliminate that from the equation, as well as having the pacing down, right? So I get a question a lot, can I have more than 15 collectibles? Sure, but if you have 100 and they're just all over the ground, there's no point in them even being there, right? You want there to be pacing to them. You want there to be a flow, right? And that way that it feels like there's an actual reward to that. Like, does anybody know, I'm sure you guys do, does anybody know how many coins you need in Mario to get an extra life? 100, right? So if that was, say, 5, how rewarding would those coins actually feel? How rewarding that extra life actually feel? Right? It would be like, oh well, and then dying, it wouldn't even matter because you have so many lives. So that's the same. Think about that same thing in terms of the actual collectibles here, right? Like if you're just giving the player one after another, there's no actual sense of accomplishment. They don't feel rewarded. So you want to spread them out and actually reward them when they do certain different interactions. So yeah, requirements: 15 collectibles. You need to have to have a player and start icon. Really important. Also have a player path laid out. Don't just assume we're going to know how to read your map. It's definitely important you include a path in there. He went above and beyond and he created his own. He just changed the color of these. Where'd it go? So you'll notice up here he made these. He went all fancy, and then after that, for whatever reason, the month after, I just kept getting the same one over and over. It's like you show someone a template, and then they just want to keep doing that. Like last month, sandstorms were the thing. Cranes and sandstorms were everywhere because he came through. So try and stay away from that. Don't just deviate on that. It's like you saw, where's my flow chart? Like this was the flow chart. Example. All right, here's my flow chart I created, and then this was Frank's, right? Like he definitely did not just take my template and copy it. He took his own impression from this and did what he wanted. That's what you're able to do. You're able to have this creative freedom. And I know, going through, through grade school and through high school and into college, like everything has been about just following rubrics and following guides. Like, yes, there are rubrics for this, but it's really about just your passion and just the level and the flow of it is what's going to drive your success. So don't just be focusing on, did I pass? Did I get a good grade? Does the level make sense? Is it actually feasible? And so there definitely are requirements, but you have the creative freedom to do what you want here. Remember, you're designing for yourself. Whatever you think you're able to accomplish in the next month and the month after that, build that design. So you're designing for what you're able to actually build. Reference images, make sure you also include those. So terrain, which I haven't covered, terrain, collectibles, and reference images. And the player start and the player path. Those are the important things. So reference images, same thing as far as the flowchart goes. You want to be able to have at least 1 or 2 reference images for each area so you have a good idea. You'll probably notice after doing the visuals and setting assignment that it may not have been as easy as you thought to get everything to scale and right proportion, but it probably looks pretty good if you took the time to actually pay attention to the details, and you'll help to realize that, wow, maybe I do need to use reference all the time. That's kind of what that assignment is there for, so you get this sense of being able to actually build something that looks like this factory right here, or build something that looks to scale like this generator area. Do you have a question?
Yeah. So my map is mostly going to be completely indoors. So does that mean I still have to have some sort of terrain?
That's a good question. And yes, you do have to have terrain. So with the terrain, the reason why you need it is so when you get to level design, you're able to be evaluated on your terrain skills. So they're going to teach you the terrain editor, how to use it, how to manipulate it, how to paint textures, all that fun stuff. So you have to at least include it in your map. This, for Anthony's map here, he did the same thing. He never went outside at all. But as long as you have like a window or something and he also had, like you'll see in here, he had terrain like coming up through the floor so it looked like big piles of sand. If you want to do things like that, that's definitely acceptable. So they don't have to physically walk on it. It doesn't have to be outdoors, but it has to be included in your map. All right, so the notes as well, definitely don't skimp on this area of the assignment. Definitely important to understand what's going on. This one, it's here. It could have been laid out a bit better to where it's a little bit more modular, that you can, or a little bit more segmented to where it's smaller little chunks of notes, like how Frank over here has these labeled. If you had the same type of scenario in your in your map, it'd be really easy to where I'm at the abandoned gas station. I come over here and I can read the notes for that gas station. So remember that the notes are what's important about the player progression and about the setups. Not super important about what things look like. That's what the reference images are for. It's more about what is the player doing? What are the actions that I need to accomplish? So definitely reference this one. Custom icons as well. I showed you gameicons.net, and you can create custom icons right in Google Draw using shapes or different little symbols, whatever you want to do. But definitely make sure that you add to this. This is a template, right? Like we're giving you, this is a starting point. If you want to just gut it and make your whole icon system yourself, I don't recommend it, but do whatever you want to do, right? As long as you have that player start and player finish, you can communicate whatever you want to through this map. Let me show you one other example from last month, and I'm going to also throw this one in the assignment because it was very well done and definitely did a good job with the notes about what I was talking about just now. So he went through and segmented each one of he color-coded each area and then had the colored words, but really, really well done in terms of space, right? Not too big, not huge. He went and grabbed some of these icons that were custom as well. And these were definitely from the Game Icon site, these little security cameras, these breakable walls. But just the space that he's trying to accomplish this in is very well done. So another really great map that I'll let you get access to if you want to read them as well. Like, see, he has like, this is basically an asset of what these are going to look like. I definitely can tell that he took everything into consideration and was really paying attention to all the detail that goes on. So another really good map that I'll share with everybody. And then the last one, so this one, this was back when the class was 1 month long, but really this team was really on point the whole way through and really good level in terms of that. So this area in specifically, so when you guys look at this example, really keep in mind that this was 3 students. Area 1, Area 2, Area 3, that's 3 people. Because sometimes I see people will turn in a map with 4 or 5 areas, and I think they're just confused with the actual instructions of the assignment. You don't need to make an entire massive level like this. You're just making one area of this. And keep in mind, it's 2 to 4 minutes of gameplay. And so this area, this map, another very well used space, right? It's not big, it's not too open, but there's still a good element of gameplay going on. Another thing that he did very well was actually putting things right along the player's path. Like, I know that sounds weird, and I'm like, well, yeah, of course you need to put things, but there's times where I'll see stuff like this, where back in this example, where it's just long stretch with nothing in the way, and this collectible's way off to the side. Well, maybe you could put the collectible right in front of the player, but it's locked or something, and they need to, figure out how to open it up, right? So actually putting stuff right along the player's path. It's okay to have certain things that are hidden, but still you want to have things that the player is very easy to see. So again, more custom icons, definitely did a good job. But even though this map was one of the better ones, you'll notice, where is it? Crowbar, right? So even some of the best maps still use these repeated mechanics. So really try and push yourselves with custom setups and unique experiences. So just again, the layout of his level and the actual construction was very well done too. Like, he's using little glass here to show actually how he's going to build these walls. So rather than just having a long cube or a line here or a little rectangle, you actually want to think about, okay, how am I going to build this when I get into Unity? What are all the pieces going to be made up of? So yeah, again, the notes, definitely the amount of detail in the notes is what we're looking for. You really want to list out all of your setups, all the interactions for the player right in here. And you'll notice on the template now, I also have, so the template for the map, you'll also notice I have this collectibles note section here. So I want you to actually write in the setup for what these collectibles are. Not just the name of it, like this is cash, this is health pickup. Actually write in what does the player have to do to pick up that collectible, right? And that'll give you, when you list them out like this, you'll see like, oh crap, half of mine are just laying on the ground. How can I make that better, right? So this is be a very quick guide for you to make sure you have your 15 as well as they're not just simple basic setups with no interaction. Also, this breadcrumb icon is a new one I'm trying out to where basically these are different types of collectibles, and then the breadcrumb could be like basically right along the player's path. So some type of collectible that you're using to guide the player or lead them in certain scenarios. So definitely use these sparingly. And if there's something else that you find that you want to use, create it or find some way to use it. And then if you want to share that, we can add that to the template. If there's anything that you see or that you like. Any questions at all about the actual map making portion of the class? Because this is really like the bread and butter and the basis of the class. And then from here, once we actually come up with a design, it's about actually testing your skills to make sure you're ready to actually build this in Unity. So it's one thing to design something, but if you can't prove that you know how to work your way around in Unity, I'm not going to let you build it, right? Because you're not actually able to. So I know I said this on the first day, but definitely this is the design portion of the actual 3-month process. So when you're here, you're actually designing and building your level how you want to, and then after that you're implementing. You're just building your level in Unity, fixing issues. Yes, you'll probably be adjusting the design if you run into any big snags, or maybe you have time to do something you didn't plan for, or maybe something's way too difficult, you need to scope or readjust. Maybe your level is just not feasible and you need to scrap it and start something slightly different. Like, things might happen like that. So you will be making design decisions, but really the core design comes down to right now while we're in these months. So I'm going to actually, while I'm here, just go ahead and drop this in here. So any other questions at all about what we've gone over? So there's Tyler's map. No? What about Perforce? You guys want to talk about Perforce at all? Like, no, please, no more. I'm done.
All right,
Question?
in the note section where they've all got their IPMs listed.
Yeah? So on the flowchart or on the map?
Oh.
Okay, well, most of it is listed on the, yeah. If you want to actually include that here, you can, but that is more of for your own knowledge, I guess, and more of a designing. Once it's in place, you don't have to include it here. But that being said, that's fine if you want to as well. That's totally acceptable. Do you have a question?
And with Perforce, I'm assuming we would be turning it in the same way.
Yep. Yeah, you'll be turning in your links the same way you turned in your brainstorming and your LDD. So you guys are 1604. So yeah, so here is your rough. You'll turn in the link there, and then your final one will go in here. So once you're done with the rough, what I would definitely recommend is bringing it into Unity. And that'll be, I can go over that a little bit more on Wednesday, but if you want to get a jump start, like say you are really ahead of the game and you're already ready, you've got your first version of your map done the next few days, if you go to the final map, is that first? Yeah, that was first. So in the final map, you'll see it's at the end here, I go through actually getting it, saving it as an image, and then getting it into Unity. I was about to say Unreal. Getting into Unity so you can test it out and adjust everything. So that brings you to another point to make is don't scale any of the icons you'll see here it says do not scale. That does not mean just the car, that means everything. Don't scale any of the icons, because then if you don't, when you bring it into Unity, everything will be to scale to that. So as long as your player fits, you'll notice in this image, the player fits pretty well right inside of that icon. Everything should be to scale to him as long as nothing has been scaled improperly. So same thing goes for the car, right? If you have your car here, if you have your car and you don't scale the player, they should be roughly scaled to each other. So things might have to be tweaked a little bit, but for the most part, it should be in a good starting point that you can adjust from there. So yeah, definitely, Tyler did a great job of a lot of custom icons in here, and most of them were right off of this website. So it just really adds a lot more detail, and it makes it feel a lot more unique, right? Rather than same icons as everyone else. As you still want to have this same consistency as everybody else, but you want there to be enough to set yourself apart from everybody. Last thing I'll mention in terms of the actual map, and I know I probably say this way too much, especially during the actual feedback. I'm sure Tim can vouch for me on this, is thinking about what you're actually building in the level compared to like where the interactive play space is and where the actual world is contained, right? So if you're building an indoor level, probably not that big of a deal. But if you have windows and things, and the player looks out, they can't just see emptiness and see nothingness. You want to be planning for what is the player seeing. If they look to the right, if they look to the left, what are they going to see? So it's one thing to just build where the player is going to be interacting, but you also need to be thinking about building everything around it. So I do have one good example. Let's see. So definitely, this map definitely has some good stuff going on with it, but again, like another common thing I see all the time is just building this rectangle and just building your map inside of it. Don't necessarily think you need to confine yourself just to a rectangle. It can be any shape you want, right? Any elaborate shape. It could be multiple levels. But yeah, again, like if you're just building it like this and then you're having the player go along the edge of the world like this, what does the player look at if they look to the left, right? So just think about these things now before you get too far ahead of yourself, and now you need to like, oh crap, now I need to go back and actually think about that. So it's not something you can't fix later, but you're just going to cause yourselves more work. So if you just think about, okay, I'm building this area and this space, and now in there the player can go here and here, it'll help you out a lot more. So definitely from here, yes, you want to finish up your LDD, the brainstorming, the LDD, and the visual settings. Get those in by the end of the day. And then definitely the next step from here is to start with the flow chart and getting your mechanics laid out and then turning that into your version of your map. And next class on Wednesday, I'm going to be doing a live walkthrough of the wind turbine experiments. So that is not due until Friday of next week. So you have, and it's been open, so you have pretty much these 2 weeks. You've had all 3 weeks, but really these 2 weeks are dedicated to your map and your entryway. So when we go over the wind turbine, that's going to give you everything you need to do to be successful with the entryway. And I'll show you a few examples from that because last month we had a few that really set themselves apart and didn't just create the simple doorway. That is like this is what you need to do to showcase all of this, but they really went above and beyond. So I'll take a few minutes to go over those next week, next class. But definitely, if you haven't already, just skim through those before next class, just so you get an understanding of what it is we're doing. And if you want to follow along with me in the lecture, we can. So definitely come prepared to work in Unity. And then from there, you'll be working on your map and the actual entryway pretty much until next week. Alrighty?